Hello and welcome back to Off Track Podcast. It's the final show before Christmas. I was going to put in a little puerile joke about Santa coming down the chimney and emptying his sack all over the living room floor, but I've been told I can't do that, so I'm not going to do it.
Ho, ho, ho.
A massive thank you to each and every one of you who subscribes to the show. We've just tickled across 7,000 subscribers. Absolutely incredible for this little show of ours, and I'm so proud of where we're at. And thank you so much for your subscription and for your likes. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. Every single one helps us grow, and we've got some great things coming in 2025, and I'd love to share them with you. So please, hit the button if you can. Enough from me. Let's get on with it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is World Superbike commentator for Eurosport, Gregory Haines. Enjoy. Gregory, welcome back to Off Track.
Yeah, sorry, hang on, let me get in position. Oh, is that it? Are we on already?
We might as well just roll into it, haven't we?
Whatever's easiest for you, David.
It's rolling, so I've already done that. Gregory Haines, Eurosport World Superbike commentator. Welcome back to Off Track Podcast. How are you, mate?
David Neal, Off Track Podcast host. Thank you very much. I'm okay. It's pouring with rain here in Spain. And I'm just trying to get tasks done before I go to England for Christmas on Monday, which is just a few days away as we record this. But I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Mate. This is our last show before Christmas. So I thought it's been getting on for 18 months since you were last on the show, and we've missed each other this year, apart from, I think, a quick chat at World Superbikes. That was it. We normally see each other a bit more often. I know we're in contact on a regular basis, but actually sitting down and having a chat about and putting the world to rights, motorcycle-wise, rather than home-wise, is something we're a bit overdue in doing, mate. So welcome back.
It's gone so fast this year, Dave. It's ridiculous. I think back to things I was getting planned before last Christmas and talking to you and various other things going on in life. And I know we say this every year, but the older you get, the quicker it goes. It's terrible. It's really,
It is.
I mean, it's been a good year. It's been a busy, full-on year, but it has not stopped.
Well, you've been here, there, and everywhere, haven't you? You've just recently finished JT's tour for his chat show. You've been doing things with Ducati UK at the NEC. You've covered a couple of rounds of World Superbike, of MotoGP,
MotoGP,
and the full World Superbike season, which was probably one of the best we've had in recent memory. So you've kind of been at the forefront of a lot of things this year.
Yeah, I suppose when you put it like that, it's absolutely true, actually. And I think because I've had quite a few new challenges, I mean, I worked in MotoGP before, but not with the TNT Sports crew and not knowing exactly how they do things and how that works. And like you said, I was with Ducati at the NEC. There's been a few other things along the way. Started off with the BMW launch in Berlin way back in January, which I believe I'm going to again in this coming January. So it's going to be straight in again. But because there's been quite a few new things to get my head around, the mental capacity it takes up, at least for me, is a lot. So even when you're back at home between events, if you know you're away again in 5 days' time, you're already thinking ahead, what do I need to do? What do I need to plan? I need to check in for that flight, I need to wash your clothes, then get them out to dry, then pack a case again. And this is what it's like 1 week into the other. And since August, I can honestly say I've barely had a free day of doing nothing. And it's nice just to do nothing sometimes, isn't it? Not all the time, because that would be boring. But yeah, it's just constant. I'm not complaining. It's all good, but it's busy. It's very, very busy. And of course, the JT tour, like you said, where we went around the UK for the best part of 2 weeks. And that meant as well that the usual wind down I have after the season's been cut short. So then I've got all of a sudden into December, stayed in England for a bit longer after working with Ducati at the NEC on the stage there. So by the time I got back here to Spain, to home, it was nearly December. So I've not quite had that kind of wind down period. And all of a sudden, I'm going to be back to England again for Christmas. And there's still a few things I need to get done, like sort out some files on my computer. I wanted to go through my wardrobes at home and get rid of some old clothes I don't wear. A bit of spring cleaning in winter. And I haven't done it. And it's annoying me because I want it done. But you can't fit too much in because I do stress myself out. I put a lot of stress on myself sometimes, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But sometimes you just need to disconnect. And I don't feel I've properly been able to do that yet. So let's see if I can get that done before the new year comes in.
Well, maybe this will be the last thing you have to do for the 2024 season anyway. And thank you, mate. I appreciate your time.
This doesn't feel like work. I've got one more thing I need to do, some subtitles and some voiceovers on a project with Covey for their Supersport 300 year. They're doing a little mini documentary on that. Once that's done, and that'll be done today or tomorrow at the latest, yeah, then I can breathe a bit. But then, you know, you're trying to get round, catch up with people, friends you haven't seen all year, family members and all that sort of thing. And it's all fun. It's all good stuff, but it is a lot to do, isn't it? And sometimes it almost feels like work.
It's a bit like the little mini tour I did recently, which I did as this goes out will be last week. It's but then you're already thinking about next year.
Yeah.
Already, it never stopped. I don't think you ever fully detach from, because there's always something. Oh, I must do this. Must update that. That's happened. Keep an eye on news, because news is still coming out all the time for rider moves, sponsor changes that you've got to keep topside of, and it never really shuts off. It feels.
Exactly. Yeah. I know, and I think it's not just our jobs. I don't think it's the world we live in now, isn't it? With social media and 24-hour rolling news, but especially social media. It's addictive. It can be so addictive. I don't know what it's like for you, but Instagram in particular for me. I'm even thinking over Christmas, I might just delete the app. Not my account, but delete the app off my phone for a while. Because there's a lot of rubbish on there as well. There's some great stuff on there, but there's a lot of distractions and rubbish that you do not need. And you know what it's like. It's so easy to just scroll, isn't it? Particularly when it's Christmas and it's dark and it's wet and it's cold and you don't feel like going out.
Doom scrolling.
You can lose 2 or 3 hours doing that. It's pathetic, really, isn't it, to be honest?
It's like
something I can improve on.
It is, but well, I think the one thing that you don't have to rely on more than we do here with the podcast is we kind of have to rely a lot more on social media than you yourself. Because we have to put the podcast out, we have to put the shows out, we have to put the reels out, we have to reply to comments, which is great. The interaction is fantastic, and I love, because I am a fame-craving northern little shit, before you start, which was christened by Gregory, for those of you who are wondering how that comes about. That is Gregory's greeting for me, the fame-craving northern little shit. But we do, and that's how it works out. But thank you for that, mate. That'll stick around for even longer now. We've put that into the open domain.
You have now found through your podcast at least some of that fame that you were craving, David.
Yes. Notoriety more than anything. I think that's nearer the way. But people always come to you for your autograph before mine.
If anyone does come up for something like that now, it's usually more selfies than autographs. But
yeah, good point.
Let's not be kidding anyone here. This is not a situation that we're getting stopped in the supermarket, or maybe every now and again at a racetrack where people know who you are. Yes, but which is lovely, by the way. It's really
absolutely
nice.
It is.
Can we're not famous people doing our jobs. We're known in our little industry of bike racing, but I know there have been commentators who genuinely believe they are famous. Almost on the level of a Hollywood actor or a singer. And that's a bit sad, isn't it, really? Because we're not. We're not. It's nice to be recognised in our circles.
Yeah.
It's lovely. It's our little bike racing community, but we're not famous, for goodness sake.
No. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's nice when we had it a few times this year. People come up and said how much they enjoy the show, in the same way people come up and say how much they enjoy the commentary. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a really weird feeling. And it's just nice to know that people are out there that appreciate what we do. So, and you get that with the comments, you get that through social media. It's why we reply. It's why we do what we do. But I mean, what a season for World Superbikes, Greg. What a 37th season, I think it is. Season 37 of World Superbikes just gone. I was there in 1988 at Donington Park, but
how old were you in 88?
You weren't even born, Greg.
I wasn't. I was born in October 89. How old were you in 88? Teenager.
15.
But yeah. Wow. It's nice.
I'm 52 just in the new year.
It's just gone 4 o'clock here, and I do live near a church. If you can hear that chiming.
Indeed, I can hear it.
That'll go again, because Spanish churches, here's a fact of the day. For anyone who's ever in Spain, they ring again at 2 minutes past. And it's because there used to be people working out on the fields in years gone by. The way of communicating messages to people in the town was through the church bells. So if you missed it first time, it rings again at 2 minutes past. So you'll hear the 4 chimes again in a moment. Anyway, that's the useless fact of the day.
Every day's a school day.
what was I going to say? Oh no, the season, 36 races, 37th season. I mean, bloody hell, BMW's won the World Superbike Championship. You had Julian Ryder on this show just a few weeks back, and I was listening to that. And even Jules said, didn't he, I never would have believed BMW was going to win the championship. And he always said to me, typical BMW, promises a lot, never delivers. And to be fair to Jules, that had always been the case. But they've done it. But the truth of the matter is, and they are an incredible organisation, but you could put Toprak Razgatlioglu on, and this is taking nothing away from BMW. I do believe the Ducati is still the best bike. Because if you look at the overall performance of the teams and the riders on each machine, pretty clear the Ducati's ahead still. But you could put Toprak on any bike in that field at the moment, including a Kawasaki or a Honda, and he would win the championship, I'm pretty sure of it. Or a Bimoto as it now is, of course. But yeah, even on a Honda, I think he would have had a chance, a good chance.
Do you think that the Yamaha ride was missold for Jonathan Rea in that respect because Toprak was so good on it?
I think Jonathan Rea probably underestimated, and not just Jonathan Rea, pretty much everyone else for that matter, underestimated just how good a job Toprak was doing. I think when we saw races in 2023, such as Portimao, when Bautista was just pulling ahead on the straights like that, there goes the bell times again. 2 minutes past. But I think a lot of people, you had Bautista, who was the smallest, lightest rider on the most powerful bike. However, the Yamaha was and is the slowest bike. So when you were getting that with Toprak and Bautista, it was a combination of lightest rider, fastest bike, one of the heavier riders on the slowest bike, which is why now they've got the weight penalty thing in place for Alvaro Bautista, and Toprak's now the one who's pulling away. So you've almost solved one problem and created another there. But to answer the question, I think it's fair to say, and it's not just me who thinks this, I do think this, but a lot of people have said it too. Toprak's made a lot of people look very silly this year. And this is not singling out individuals as such, but it is a fact that Jonathan Rea, Scott Redding, who's on another BMW, the whole Yamaha team, really, although Toprak took a lot of them with him to BMW from his side, but they've all been made to look a little bit silly, haven't they? Because Toprak's left and Yamaha's not won a race. And Jonathan Rea's finished 13th in the championship and over 100 points behind his teammate, Locatelli, and behind Remy Gardner as well on the GRT Yamaha. In Jonathan's own words, that really was a disaster. It could not have been much work, could it? One podium in a sprint race as well, not even a long race, and several injuries. Not nice, really, to see that. The sport would be better with Jonathan Rea fighting at the front. I think
No
I've
question.
not really found any. I haven't found anyone who wouldn't think that. There's obviously people who don't like Jonathan Rea, but there's a lot of Jonathan Rea fans out there. In fact, I would honestly say that I know people who love and hate is a very strong word, but people who love and dislike riders, apart from Toprak, I don't really know anyone who doesn't like Toprak in the paddock or out of it. But I think Yamaha,
there isn't anything to dislike about him, Greg.
No, there's not. There's certain things I think about certain people in life that you might not dislike, including you and I'm absolutely sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But with Toprak, I can't see many things that I don't see anything you could really dislike about Toprak. Unless you love going out boozing, and obviously he doesn't drink alcohol. That might be one thing. But no, jokes aside, the guy is a phenomenon. He really is. But Yamaha, in fairness to Yamaha, because I was a bit harsh about them just then, but they have underperformed. There's no doubt about it. But they were the only manufacturer not to receive concessions and help from the organisers, which they will get now for 2025. So, as always, it's the same thing I say to you every year, Dave. I just want as many people and manufacturers as possible to be in the mix. We want the race to come down to the last corner, and we want the championship to come down to the last race, if possible. But you would be brave or stupid, I think, to look past Toprak again, because the guy is the generational superstar, isn't he? He is up there on Marc Marquez, Bagnaia, Martin, Acosta levels. He's
no question. He absolutely is. He is a joy to watch, and that's a great thing of when you can watch somebody race, that you actually enjoy watching them ride at the same time. I don't think we kind of got that too much with Jonathan. He was a neat and tidy rider. He did everything perfectly. As a 6-time world champion, he was sensational on a motorcycle. But he lacks the flair that Toprak has. and you look
Yeah,
at like
there was
MotoGP riders
an
of the past, you have a certain flair as a rider. Marc
Yeah.
Marquez, Casey Stoner, to watch them on a motorcycle was pure joy. And Toprak
Yeah.
has the same feeling for me.
Kevin Schwantz is another one who people
Yeah.
often go on about, isn't he? You know, even now, even here in Spain, there's so many people, oh, Schwantz. The way he went about things, you know, smoke pouring off the rear tire sideways, like you said, like Marquez, Toprak. The number of people who've come up to me who were at Donington this year down by the Melbourne Loop and watching in basically half the straight between the Foggy S's and Melbourne on the front tire, on the front wheel, under braking, still making apex and still gaining a second over everybody else in one sector alone. It's just outrageous. He's moved the game on. And this happens every now and again, doesn't it? You get someone who comes along and changes things. My good mate Nick Harris, who was good friends with Barry Sheehan, always said the trouble with Kenny Roberts was Barry knew he was better than him. Because he came across from America with this dirt track style of knee down, and now it's become elbows, shoulders, everything, ears down now, isn't it, almost? Someone comes along every now and again and moves the game on, and that's what Toprak's done. And yeah, he's unbelievable. MotoGP should be absolutely crying out for Toprak, shouldn't they? If you think of the lovely TV rights they could sell, and if you get a Turkish Grand Prix and he's a different nationality in a paddock that is predominantly full of Spaniards and Italians. And I've got nothing against Spaniards or Italians, as I've said before, probably even here on this show with you. But you can't have too much of one thing. It was like when there was an overload of Brits in World Superbikes in the middle of the last decade because of the success of BSB. Now we've got a real shortage of Brits at the moment coming through, haven't we? It changes, but Toprak is phenomenal. And why was Foggy so popular? Because between 95 and 2000, he was the only British rider winning races in World Superbike in a field full of Australians, Kiwis, Italians, Americans, and the Brit was on top. And that's why Toprak's so popular and so famous in Turkey. If he goes to MotoGP, it's a big loss though for World Superbikes, and he could go in 2026. So we'll see. Wherever he is, the better for that championship. The only worry though, Dave, in Superbikes is he could if he stays, he could absolutely dominate the thing in the same way Jonathan Rea was doing. And yeah, I agree. Jonathan Rea was like the Alain Prost, to use a Formula One comparison, of World Superbikes, wasn't he? The professor, clinical, methodical. Some people said boring. I don't agree with that. It wasn't boring, but it was predictable. But he got the job done, and he was an absolute machine.
Exactly.
You never quite know what's going to happen with Toprak, though, do you?
I think it would be a massive loss to the championship if he did.
Oh.
And would Dorna not want to keep their best riders in each series in the series that they're in? I get there's the commercial side of things, and it'll be massive in MotoGP being bigger in Turkey because Deniz Oncu, Can Oncu haven't quite made the grade to lift the profile of MotoGP in Turkey. But for me, you need the best riders of the series to stay in there. And I think for BMW to keep Toprak where he is, if he stays with BMW, he might want to go to a different manufacturer. Imagine what he could do on a Ducati. You know, so with the V4, whatever the iteration of the next V4R is that's due out in 2026.
Yeah.
He could be a 3-time world champion on 3 different manufacturers. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. But it would as you say, it would devalue the series if Toprak did move to MotoGP.
I think first things first, if he does stay in World Superbikes, yes, I think he will want to win with 3 manufacturers, if not more. I know that's a goal of his. He could win on any of those bikes right now. That is the truth of the matter. He's that good. And he'd make sure he's got the right people around him. He'd take his crew chief, he'd take whoever he wants, and he'd be able to because it's Toprak. Ducati at the moment wouldn't pay as much because they've got the better bike. So the ones who really need people are going to have to pay through the nose, which is why BMW paid a lot when they got Vandermark and Redding and Toprak. And, you know, with Jonathan Rea, ironically, left Kawasaki and paid out of his final year of his contract to go for less money at Yamaha, thinking and believing he was going to have more chances in the same way he did successfully. Let's not forget when he left Honda to go to Kawasaki 10 years ago. You know, the winter of 10 years ago, look how things have changed. The talk that year was Ray leaves, Honda to go to Kawasaki, and Sylvain Guintoli had left Aprilia to go to Honda, and look how things have changed in the space of a decade. One thing I've heard that is very, very interesting is that QJ Motor, and I did a blog about this on my website a few weeks back. QJ Motor, who have been in Supersport this year and had some decent results towards the end of the season with Raffaele De Rosa, they've just signed Nicky Tully for next year, and they're going to be launching, at least they plan to launch, a Superbike project in collaboration with Pichetti for 2026. And I already know from people at QJ, who I know from before from other teams, that the big boss of QJ is eyeing at Toprak. Now, that sounds a bit ridiculous right now to say that, but Toprak was a challenge. No one expected him to go to Yamaha, and no one expected him to go to BMW. What's to say if he doesn't go to GP, he might not go to QJ? As long as he's got the good technical support he needs there, they'd pay big money because they're owned by a huge company from China called Geely Holdings, which owns Lynk & Co, Lotus, Smart, Volvo, and a series of other huge automotive companies. They're huge. They're absolutely massive. You heard it here first. You could see Toprak on one of those bikes if he doesn't go to GP. If he does go to GP, I don't think he will go with BMW. And the impression I get from people within BMW is that he probably wouldn't, because if they run that project, it'll be from 2027 with the new regulations, which makes sense. But he's not going to want to wait that long, is he? You know,
How
he's
old
getting
will he be
older.
by then?
Well, he was born in 96, Toprak, October 96. So if he went in 27, he'd be 30, getting on for 31, 30 and a half by the time the season started.
You can't do that in MotoGP, Greg.
Not anymore. And you need a full season of testing before. There's a load of circuits he doesn't know. So you'd need to get him out of testing. You can't just give him a winter of pre-season testing, which is limited these days anyway. It's not like the olden days when they used to be able to pound around doing laps here, there, and everywhere. So
he'd end up doing the Valencia test for one day at the end of the season. He'd end up doing Sepang, 6 days at Sepang, because as a rookie you get 3 days extra, don't you?
True.
But again, it's not enough.
And then you're going to go and beat Pecco Bagnaia, are you? And Martin and Marquez? No way. And Acosta will probably be on even better form by then, and there'll be others coming up through Moto2 and all the rest of it. So if he goes, we're probably looking at 2026, because he's in his last year now. 24/5 was a 2-year deal with BMW. So once 25 is done, he's a free agent. So Honda, HRC could be an option. Yamaha, with Paolo Pavesio now running the show, seems to be gaining traction. But he did do testing with them before, and they didn't give him what he wanted in terms of a lower seat and other things he requested. But maybe now with the new leadership, it'll be a bit different. Rakina Zavog is insisting on a factory bike, which made perfect sense, because as much as we hear satellite teams are gaining support, it's never going to be exactly the same as the factory team. It just won't be. It's not. Never have been, never will be. So I don't know. I honestly don't know what he's going to do. If he goes to MotoGP, I think he will be 26. But he's going to want a decent package he can actually challenge on. Unless he does go somewhere like Honda Day, then gets in for 26, and then hopes they produce something fantastic with the new regulations for 27. You know, new regulations, things could turn around again in the same way the Japanese have fallen behind. What's to say they're not going to bounce back again? It's happened before. Look at McLaren in the F1 world. Used to be on top of the world, and then they had a disaster when the hybrid formula started. They were at the back of the field a few years ago, and now they've just won the Constructors' Championship for the first time since 98. So things go in cycles. We've seen this before, and we'll see it again. If I really had to put money on it, I genuinely do not know. I've normally got an inkling as to what they might do. I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's going to depend on... It's also going to depend on how rider seasons go, isn't it? This upcoming season in GP. The Jack Millers, the Johan Zarcos of this world, and a few others, to see if they stay or go. And that'll open doors or not. That's going to be a part of it too. But right now, I'm not sure.
They could end up being revolving doors, couldn't they? If Toprak does go up and then World Superbike gains Jack Miller, that's not a bad trade-off, to be fair. But especially as now, as you alluded to earlier, World Superbikes aren't looking at national champions anymore. They're looking at top-end Moto2 in terms of Buliga to bring him back through Supersport and then into Superbike, who we'll come on to shortly. But it will be the the end of career MotoGP riders like Zarco, like Jack Miller, as Carlos Checa did previously, Max Biaggi. There's been plenty that have made the trip the opposite way. So I don't think it. I just don't want if Toprak does go, there doesn't want to be a yawning chasm left behind. There needs to be somebody to fill it with character, with that same fan engagement, and not somebody who is more akin to a more professional outlook. How's that for an eloquently put reply?
I mean, that's why Reading was good, though, wasn't it? When Scott Reading came in 2020, you had the methodical, set in his ways, get the job done, the machine that was Jonathan Ray. Brilliant. He did it his way. You had Reading, heart on his sleeve, sometimes gets himself into trouble for speaking his mind, but people love that because at least he does speak his mind. But between it worked, didn't it? And we had a good mix. And now you've got a good mix. You've got Bautista, you've got Buliga, you've got Toprak, you've got Petrucci. There's, Andrea Iannoni's been in the mix this year.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of characters in World Superbike. I hope now it's coming through a bit more with the TV coverage. But Toprak is a phenomenon. And he's just a joy. He's a joy to work with. He's a joy to watch. Every time you meet him, he's always asking you how you are, because he's genuinely interested. And what I also love about Toprak is he doesn't play these stupid mind games that some riders play in terms of trying to play the press and say one thing to a journalist or leak a stupid rumor that might not even be true to get people. He doesn't need to do that. He's so good. He just does his talking on the track, and he says what he thinks every time. If someone asks him, "Are you going to stay with BMW?" and he said, "Well, no, I might go to MotoGP," he doesn't dodge the questions. He doesn't not say the name of another brand when he works for one company. If he rides for BMW and needs to mention the word Yamaha, he can. Like, some manufacturers won't even let their riders say the name of another mark. So let's just say Yamaha won't generally let their riders say the word Kawasaki or Ducati. And it's not just Yamaha, it's most of them. Which is fine. I can understand why, but it's also a bit mad in some ways. It's a bit over the top. Well, in my opinion, it is anyway. But I can see why they would do it. But yeah, World Superbike's always been, hasn't it? The very first event, you had Marco Lucanelli there, the former 500cc Grand Prix champion, and Fred Merkel had come over from Honda America. But that is what we've lost. That is one problem for British riding now. The British Superbike Championship, as Julian Ryder said on this show a few weeks back, it's not designed to get people up into World Superbikes. It is the best Superbike national series in the world because of the show it is, but it's a show. It's a show. BFB is a different promoter. So to be fair, as Jules said, why would MSVR feel they need to pay money to nurture riders to then go up into a Dorna Championship or a Liberty Media Championship as it now is? That's another interesting thing, of course. What's Liberty going to do moving forward? MotoGP will be the main priority, and there's plenty of thoughts that Stefano Domenicali, who's obviously headed up things in F1 and was the Ferrari team principal in F1 before that, and many other things at Ferrari too. Lots of thoughts he's going to come over to the MotoGP side and lead that, which would be really exciting if he does. But what are they going to do with Superbikes? This is the one thing we don't really know yet, and there's been no talk about it at all.
There hasn't. It's all been about MotoGP, hasn't it? Because Dorna also run World Superbike, so it's the whole landscape is about to change.
Yeah, if it does change, it won't be 25; it'll be 26 now. But Sean Muir, the BMW team principal, said to me, I was interviewing him for MCN a month or so ago, and he said, "We need to know." He said, "We need to know because we're kind of scraping the barrel now." He said, "We've been at the absolute bare minimum now for 2 or 3 years in the sense that we've only got one flyaway round on the calendar." If you speak to, say, Alex Lowe's, for example, his opinion is that we're okay with the championship we've got. And I agree with Alex, we are. But I do also think to call something a world championship and gain a fan base around the world, you need to go around the world. I'm not saying we need 8 races away in exotic locations, but 3 or 4 would be nice, wouldn't it? We've had Thailand, they've all gone. Japan, why don't we have a World Superbike race in Japan? Half the manufacturers come from Japan. Why can't we get back to Sugo or Suzuka? They might say it's a bit dangerous, but World Endurance races at Suzuka. How good would that be? Spa? Let's go to Spa. That's the European one. But I've always thought Superbikes has got to be different to MotoGP. We need different venues. There's no point going to all the same tracks. Let's get Imola back. Let's go to
Laguna
Sugo.
Seca.
Laguna. It's good we've got Donington and not Silverstone because it's different, not because I've got anything against Silverstone. Brands House is always talked about. Some people are saying if they slow the bikes down a bit, which they're going to have to do, otherwise they will be as quick as MotoGPs or closer than they already are. We might be able to get back to places like Brands because the speeds will be reduced. I'm not sure personally about Brands. I think you're going to have to make quite a lot of changes there to homologate it. There's a lot of barriers that are very close, particularly around the Grand Prix loop, well, all around the track. But anyway, the point I'm making is it would be nice to see more different circuits. That's what we need. It needs to be different. Otherwise, what's the point? It's like running in the shadow of MotoGP all the time. MotoGP is the premier, and it should be. It's Grand Prix racing. But it would be nice if Superbike could sometimes have a bit of a go and not be stuck underneath.
Needs to be a little more parity, doesn't there? Because it's a great championship in its own right.
It's a great product.
In terms of entertainment and race and the characters that it's got in it, 3 races a weekend. You know, what more do you want? MotoGP they've ramped it up to 2, which is great. You get a sprint race on a Saturday and the main race, the main Grand Prix on the Sunday. But having the long race on a Saturday afternoon, Super Pole race on a Sunday lunchtime, long race on a Sunday afternoon, in the same mold as BSB and World Superbike, it's a great product. There's action. It's for you. It's a busy weekend.
Yeah, it's good for being trackside as well because there's a lot of track action. One thing that did strike me when I did the MotoGPs earlier this year is the Saturdays can drag on in the morning because there's no race action. There's a lot of, and don't get me wrong, you don't need races all the way through the weekend because sometimes too much makes it less special. And one thing that MotoGP always used to have, and Formula One was the same, was one big Grand Prix on the Sunday that it built up to. But there's a lot of long, drawn-out qualifying sessions in MotoGP on a Saturday. I don't know whether they need to just shorten them a bit. Long practice sessions. I still think it's a bit complicated that the naming of the sessions is utterly ridiculous.
I didn't even look at that this year to practice no, FP1, FP2, FP3 qualifying. Get on with it. And that FP4 session that was 45 minutes of race runs. Yeah. I get why they did it for the rider and the team side of things and getting the bike to the optimum level because it is MotoGP. It is the pinnacle. But as a spectacle to watch on TV, it's not.
Exactly. And that's where I think the organisers need to make a decision at some point. What are we aiming for here? Are we aiming for the technical pinnacle? Are we aiming for a good show? I think probably the answer is you need a bit of a balance of both. But it is a show because if you haven't got a good show, the fact of the matter is fewer people will watch. Fewer people are going to turn up at the venues and fewer people will want to pay, let's be honest, good money to get a television subscription because that's what it's all like these days. There's nothing on terrestrial telly anymore. Well, to be fair, there will be extraterrestrial coverage next year in the UK.
Extraterrestrial coverage, Greg.
So, yeah, there's going to be, but there will be some extra stuff on the terrestrial television coverage.
Well done.
With the Crest channel, they'll be showing all the sprints with the TNT Sports coverage. So
indeed.
That's good. But they need to because the general audience of sport is dropping. You've got Netflix, you've got Amazon, you've got HBO, you've got all this other stuff people can be doing. At the moment, you're in a situation where a lot of people are only paying for these sports because they know it's on and they're going to watch it, but it's not going to drag new people in. That's why Drive to Survive was so good, wasn't it, for F1? It's brought a whole new audience in, particularly outside of Europe, in America and Asia and all over the place. The pandemic helped, of course, because everybody was sat in with nothing else to do at that time. But it worked. It got new people in. And if you're going to get new people in, you've got to spread out. And I've said before, why don't you, in the weeks leading up to events, get a Superbike on the car park of the Sainsbury's or the Tesco that's down the road from the venue. Get interest in, get tickets being given out as prizes, sell tickets in local pubs, get the riders to go
used to do that.
BSB
on a Thursday.
Yeah.
They went into the local, when they were at Cadwell, they went to Lincoln, and when they were at Donington, they went to Derby, and they had a bit of a stand in the middle of the local town, meet the riders. This is where we are this weekend. Come and see us.
I know it's going to cost something. It can't be done for free, but you know, if you look at it as an investment, put a bit more in, fingers crossed, you might get a bit more out. Why can't we get Toprak on BBC Breakfast with the team, or on Good Morning Britain with Susanna Reid or whoever, talking on there, or go on Anton Deck Saturday Night Takeaway and get them on the back of the bike, and imagine the public with seeing this. Who the hell do you say his name? And B, no, this guy's different. Oh, if
It
you're a
has to
civic
be
person,
exciting.
yeah,
You got to move it away
You
from. You got to move it away from short form videos where people just turn in for the crashes.
Yeah.
That was the great thing about the final round of BSB is it was clean. It was great overtakes. It was last corner, last lap of the season. And I get exactly what you want to say for World Superbike. That's how every season should pan out for every championship. It needs to go to the last race of the season every year. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. We know that injuries, mitigating circumstances. But when all the planets align, this is how we want a championship to end. And that was the singular best end to a championship I have ever known. It trumps Hill and Hopper. It trumps every other championship, even the half point of the year before with Tommy and Glenn. This was the pinnacle of final rounds of a season. It had everything, and it was clean.
Well, you could say it was the best end to a season since BSB in 2011, as you've just said, Hill and Hopper, and that was BSB as well. BSB is so good at creating characters, isn't it, as well? And what you have got there with the Eurosport coverage as well on the TV is they've got full control over everything. They do what's known as the world feed, which is broadcasting the actual race and not just the show around the race.
Yes.
So they've got access to everything. And ITV4 does a very similar thing with the British Touring Car Championship. You know, they're household names, aren't they? They're not racing now, but people like Matt Neal, Jason Plato, there's a lot of people who know those names who don't necessarily watch motorsport. And that's one thing I do think we are losing, and it's a concern, and I'm sure you agree with this. You know, you could go out into your high street now in Britain and ask people, have you heard the name Tommy Bridewell? No. I think with respect to Tommy or any other rider on the BSB grid, maybe the only exception might be a Haslam because of Ron, you know, and what a household name Ron was. But how many people on the high street now are going to know who Alvaro Bautista is or Toprak Razgatlioglu? Whereas if you ask them who Barry Sheen is or Schumacher or Damon Hill or Colin McRae, these are all motorsport names and people know them.
Absolutely.
Why? Because we've lost the terrestrial television coverage. I work for a television company that is not necessarily a terrestrial television company. So I'm not slamming my own employers or my own, you know, platform, if you know what I mean. But I just think everyone involved needs to think a bit more outside the box. Everyone, the organisers of the championships, the circuits, the teams, the riders, us doing what we're doing, podcasts and commentaries and everything else. I know it's easy to say this. I don't want to sound like a politician who's just criticising things and not providing any solution, because that would be ridiculous. But that's why I do think we need to just get them more involved in mainstream stuff, or, you know, whatever's trending on TikTok at the moment or whatever, which I don't use TikTok, but get the riders more involved in that stuff. I don't know. I just think we could do a lot more. Like these people waving checkered flags in MotoGP. With respect, there's no point getting some Spanish actor who no one else has ever heard of. I'm sure they're well known in Spain amongst certain age groups. That's ridiculous. You need to get someone much more famous. I like the idea of getting kids out of the grandstand. That's something I thought they should do years ago. I remember saying that when I worked for Dorna, because at least it's a fan, it's a kid, it's a special moment. But who are all these random influencers, and what does that add? Okay, they might post one picture of themselves waving a flag, but
that's all the organisers want. It's weird.
But am I a boomer? Am I just old fashioned and thinking that's stupid? I mean, does that really have an impact apart from the day or the few hours after that picture's posted? Is anyone going to remember that? I don't know. No. I remember Pele waving the checkered flag at the Brazilian Grand Prix in F1 in 2002.
But he's an icon himself.
Yeah, the Schumacher brothers came through and he missed Michael and didn't wave the flag. So that was the funniest thing about it. But I remember that. I don't remember who waved the checkered flag at Portimao MotoGP this year. I mean, it may have been some racing icon or someone who did that one, but do you see my point?
No, 100%.
Some random Instagrammer here who has I've got nothing against influencers, by the way, but what interest do they actually have in racing?
They don't. It's
That's
the
the problem.
engagement and the reach that they give MotoGP, because
Yeah.
what the championships are working so hard to do now is to lower that average age of the fan. Because you know well enough that doing this podcast, I am essentially in the larger percentage talking to myself. The 45 to 65 age group is, I think, 60% of our viewer and listenership. We do have younger viewers on, we do have slightly older viewers on, but the biggest percentage, and almost 2/3, is 45 to 65 years old. And when you look around a race circuit in the UK, that's what you see. And they bring along their kids might get into it. I was fortunate enough with Emily that she still enjoys the racing. She's 22. But there's so many come along as kids, and then they go off and they do something else. They're playing Minecraft, they're doing gaming or something. Like, they don't want to come out anymore. They don't want fresh air. It's bad for you.
Esports does get younger audiences, doesn't it? Because they can relate to it, because they're playing them as well.
They can't relate to motorcycle. And I was chatting about this to a friend of mine on Monday evening, to Stewie Barker, the author, and we were talking about that when you were kids, you had, and with Brent Gladwin yesterday, FS1Es, KR1Ss, RGV 250s, TZR 125s. That was your mode of transport, and that was my Gen X's mode of transport. We were the last, I think, probably potentially the last generation to where you could literally have a Sunday afternoon, a couple of hours riding, bloke steps out in front of you. If you don't hit him, you've passed. And that's it. That was away with your license. And there was so many bikes to choose from. There was a progression. Now you need to give DNA samples. Insurance is through the roof.
Yeah.
The motorcycling industry itself is on its arse in the UK.
Yeah.
Bikes aren't selling. Insurance is skyrocketed. It's a difficult situation. And to bring in new fans, they look at esports. Jack Hammersley, who was the MotoGP esports world champion this year, I think for the second time, never ridden a bike in his life, bless him. But he's rightly done so well on the esports. But mate, I'm Gen X. I don't get it.
And another thing is, in the UK as well, we don't really have the climate. There's bloody speed cameras everywhere.
It's true.
There's potholes in all the roads. You know, the roads in the UK are generally a bit of a disgrace at the moment. And not only that, there is so much traffic everywhere in comparison with 40, 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago. There are less reasons to want to go out there and think I can safely ride a motorbike, I would imagine. I don't ride a motorbike. I'm not pretending I ride a motorbike, but talking to a lot of people who do, talking with people at MCN, talking with fans at the circuits, and there's plenty of them who chat with us, which is really nice. And I love that part of it. That was one great thing on the JT tour as well that we did. Because people just want to talk. It's a common interest. But yeah, there's all these reasons for not getting a bike now. Like you said, insurance is absolutely outrageous. But just going back briefly, Dave, to what we said about the influencers. Yes, they're trying to get it to a younger audience, but I'd like to know, is the younger audience coming as a result of these influencers and people posting the odd picture with Marc Marquez? Maybe they are. I might be wrong. I'm not saying they're not. I don't know. I
don't think they are. I think the awareness is there. It's raising awareness, and it's raising reach, so that the commercial department can go, look how many people this post reached. MotoGP is getting out into the masses. Is it turning into ticket sales? Not in the UK. It's not, because Silverstone was poor again this year for MotoGP.
We go to Superbike places, and there won't be the promotion there is for MotoGP because there's less budget involved. But at some places, I don't see a single sign advertising the race until we get to the gates of the circuit. Why aren't there billboards all over the closest airport and all down the motorway? You see billboards for other things, for aquariums and water parks and all these other things that are. Why are there no signs anywhere? I don't get that. It can't be that expensive, can it, to produce a sign to stick up on the side of a motorway?
As a niche sport,
It
we're a
is a niche
struggle.
sport.
We're
Yeah.
a bit of a struggle in a niche sport. We're never going to be
Mm,
football, cricket, basketball, Formula
true.
One.
True.
We're never going to be that as
Mm,
motorcycle racing
yeah.
people. But we're no less passionate about it than
Mm.
football, cricket, basketball, Formula One. There's just less of us. And we would like to have more
Yeah.
people along. I mean, for those listening and watching, those listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever, and on YouTube, let us know in the comments what you think. What would you like to see? What are your thoughts on World Superbike and MotoGP? It's interesting to hear your thoughts as well as the guys and girls who sit on the grass banks. We're noticing that attendances are down. I don't think BSB was particularly well attended this year in relation to other years. I think we're still struggling to come out of the COVID days and
Oh,
people wanting
that's
to come out.
definitely
There's
a huge
definitely a
problem.
knock on for that. I'm
Yeah.
not saying BSB has been well attended, but they've not been record numbers.
Wow.
And when you go back to, as you said earlier on with Scott Redding, 2019, and I remember this clearly, the Redgate and Hollywood, the banking through there, especially at Hollywood where the grass bank is, was full. And Scott brought so many so many Scott Redding fans
Yeah.
through the gates of BSB. And you need those characters. You need those just effervescent characters. You're not sure what they're going to say. Tommy's brilliant at it. Kyle is getting there. Brad is methodical.
Yeah.
You're looking through the BSB field. They're all fantastic riders, but we need a couple of Scott Reddings in there as well, which I think, or a Toprak that will grab the British public and go, come and look at this guy. He's cool.
Yeah. I remember World Supers being absolutely packed at Donington as well. I think it was 2022, was it? And we had glorious sunshine. And it was, or it might have even been 23. But I remember going to Donington. It wasn't this year. It was one of the previous years. And it was packed all down through the Craners, up the other side, out the old hairpin, up through Starkey's. And I hadn't seen it like that, certainly in the time I've ever worked there. You talk about the 120,000 at Brands. If it was 120,000 at Brands, whatever it was busy. What's happened to air horns, by the way? You don't hear anyone
It's a
with an air
really
horn in
good
the
point.
stands anymore.
That is a great point. That
I mean,
added to the atmosphere
Just a
beautifully.
few air horns would be great, wouldn't it, at the start of a race? Are they not selling them anymore, or what? Have we all gone health and safety con? Is that why? Because okay, there was more people, and don't get me wrong, but I don't hear hardly a single air horn. And I heard one coming through my headphones doing, I think it was Jerez World Superbikes at the end of this season. I thought, oh, I've not heard that sound for a long time. It just doesn't feel like you hear them anymore, because even just 2 or 3 of them going off really adds to it.
It
I
used to
don't
be
know,
like a Mexican wave going round as the
Yeah.
bikes reached the points with the air horns, they would go, and you could, like a rally when they whistle ahead of the cars coming through. You could, it was like a Mexican wave going around the track. So as soon as they came round again, everybody was popping out the air horns, and it just made such a great atmosphere. It made a fantastic atmosphere. Yes, health and safety's made a difference. Yes, circuits are very, very aware of the suing what's the word?
Well,
What's the word?
the liability.
The liability side of things, and the
Yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
the suing culture, and well, you've done that. That's it. It's ridiculous. So I get there's two sides to every story. There's no doubt about it, but it seems fascinating that we just need to lift that atmosphere a little bit more at BSB and World Superbike. MotoGP, you can't raise the atmosphere at Silverstone. I'm sorry, you can't. It's just, it doesn't lend itself to it, and there aren't enough people there like at Formula One where you can feel the atmosphere.
Silverstone is a massive circuit. It's spread over a vast space, especially if you're using the full Grand Prix circuit. You can get multiple hundreds of thousands into there. This is another reason I think World Superbike should use Cremona. Okay, to be fair, this year there were a few nasty incidents and some big escapes that could have been very bad. Alex Lowe's at one point actually hit the wall at the last corner, and it wasn't shown on the TV. Probably not a coincidence it wasn't shown, by the way. And it is a bit dodgy. Don't get me wrong. But no dodgier, I would say, than the British circuits. British circuits, I think it's fair to say they're not the safest in the world. I'm not saying they're dangerous, But guess what? Motorbike racing is dangerous. It can never be too safe. There are, I think it's fair to say, I'm sure you'll agree, Dave, a few places around some of the British circuits that are a bit dicey still. And Cremona's the same. Imola is the same. There's only really the MotoGP F1 tracks that aren't like that, where you've got these vast runoff areas. However, it gives you a greater sensation of speed. The crowd can get closer. Look how packed the Isle of Man TT is every year. Look how many people go to Cadwell Park. What's the one thing these places have in common? You can get right up to the edge of the road or the racetrack. And there is a chance there's going to be incidents, and people want to see incidents. Now, I am not saying for 1 second I want riders or drivers getting hurt. Of course we don't. But people like the odd thrill and spill. That's what was always the attraction to motorsport. Sterling Moss always said it's the danger. That's one thing that does make it unique. You've just mentioned health and safety. We're living very much in a health and safety conscious universe here. Everywhere you go, James Whittam will say this to you as well. We've talked about this, I'm sure, on the podcast before. Everywhere you go, there's a sign saying caution, wet floor, or caution, hot water, or yellow strips down all the stairs so you don't trip. Or if you do trip, don't say we didn't warn you. There were lots of signs up.
Mind your head.
That's what, mind your head, mind the gap. That's what's good about bike racing. There's still that sense of freedom and liberty, isn't there? That you are the master of your own demise. If you do make a mistake, it's going to hurt. That's why I'd be too much of a chicken to do it. That's why I admire the guys and girls who do.
100%.
Really do.
They are all infinitely faster and braver than I.
They are the heroes. And the marshals, of course, are also the heroes. But it's the right. I mean, what they're doing is crazy, really. When you go and stand trackside and see the speeds they're coming past at, it's mad. But it's also bloody brilliant, isn't it? That's why we love it so much. And the respect as well in our little tight-knit bike community. Some of the things I hear the F1 driver saying sometimes over the team radio and to each other, I think you absolute big bunch of babies. But the reason is they're in a safety cell. They know the chances of getting hurt are relatively low, much lower than they used to be. And therefore, you do see some stupid driving and some stupid things get said. Bike racers don't generally do that, do they? There's an inherent respect because they know there is every chance they could kill themselves, even though they'd never say that.
They might not like each other, but there is an underlying respect for every rider. You don't have to get on with everybody, and I think that was some of the. I read that as a little bit of criticism of Jorge Martin and Pecco this year. They were too nice to each other.
Yeah,
but when you look at Tommy and Kyle, they had utmost respect for each other, and it was a fantastic end to the season. We know Tommy and Glenn don't get on, but there is an underlying respect from each other. They're not going to go out to hurt each other because it's your career at the end of the day. It's your livelihood. Nobody wants to take somebody else's livelihood away from them. They want to beat them almost at all costs.
Your livelihood and your life.
Yeah.
Actually.
That is true, yeah. That is true.
Full stop.
So it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it, for motorcycle racing at the minute? I find it that we're in a weird state of flux where we're never going to walk away from it. We will always love motorcycle racing as long as we've got breath in our body. And everybody who watches the podcast, they're watching it because they're motorcycle racing fans. They're listening to it because they're motorcycle racing fans. That's how we draw people together. And long may it continue. That's the biggest thing. It's never. It's like you said when you quote the guy who was outside of Burnley Football Club. Bloody miserable. It's still there. It's what brings us all together, and it's an escape from what is a pretty shitty world at the minute, and that's how I view it. It's our escape. Yes, I enjoy the football. That's well documented on the show. It's a rare occasion that you have somebody so into motorcycle racing that really enjoys football as well. But it's a big world, and you can kind of do what you want. It's my choice. But
for anyone who's wondering what that quote is that Dave was just mentioning, that was back during the pandemic when they closed everything up in the UK, and a news reporter goes up to this elderly man on a motorized scooter in Burnley, just going past the football stadium, isn't he?
Yeah.
And so, excuse me, sir, do you mind me asking how you feel at the moment? I'm bloody miserable, actually. The pubs are shut. What do you expect? It's such a human moment. And we need more human moments like that. Why
We
are
do.
pantomimes and things so popular? Why do so many people still go and see Panto at Christmas? Because it's
Oh, no,
fun.
they don't.
Oh, yes, they do. But you've got heroes and villains, and we need a bit of that. That's probably why someone like an Andrea Iannone actually is good in bike
Yeah.
race, because, or a Glenn Irwin will just go caution to the wind sometimes in BSB. Marquez will do it in MotoGP. Marquez is never going to go into a corner second and come out second. He's either going to come out on the floor with the other guy or ahead of him with the other guy possibly on the floor, as we saw with Budiga actually in the Race of Champions this year. Marquez knew exactly what he was doing there. And I would be putting money on Marquez to win the championship next year. And I do think it's surely only a matter of time, isn't it, between those two Ducatis before they come together, Pecco and Mark. I hope not, but I won't be at all surprised.
That's more down to, well, we saw a little glimpse of that at Portimao, didn't we?
Yeah.
Through the what turn number was that with the VIP place? 9? No,
5, isn't it?
before that. 5, isn't it? It's before that.
Yeah.
So we saw that there's already a little bit of like, you're not having that. Yes, I am. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, neither of us are
I
having
also
it
do think though, if they do collide, it will be Mark who causes the collision. That's my prediction.
On the balance of probability, I would suggest so.
Yes.
Pecco's too clean and he's too deep a thinker for that, which is why there were he's had such an up and down season. But back to World Superbikes, who with the BMW, will they still be on concessions for next year as well? Now they've won the title, or are they?
I shouldn't think so because no, because Toprak obviously they had already lost some concessions when they lost 2 full race wins. When they celebrated 2 full race wins. So they had extra testing, for example, this year. Until you get 2 race wins in the full races, not the sprints, not the Super Bowl race, but the feature race. So they'd already lost the extra testing when you won those 2 races. And no, I don't think they'll be getting more. They've already had a super concession, which is now, I believe, been integrated into their bike. There is a new BMW though, effectively.
Absolutely, there is. Yeah, for 2025. Yeah,
it's always a bit of a blurred line between what do you officially class as a new bike or an updated bike, but it's a new BMW. It's a completely new engine. The Yamaha's got super concessions. They've got changes. The big motor, of course, is effectively Kawasaki's way of taking on Ducati with a bike that'll cost 44,000 euros on the top of the price cap. For anyone who doesn't know, Bimota is owned by Kawasaki, the parent company. So that's their way of getting around that. There will still be Kawasaki's on the grid, well, one for Gerloff and the Pacetti team, which is now known as Kawasaki Racing Team, or Kawasaki World SBK Team officially. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Toprak develops that bike now, because that'll be a new challenge developing it, not quite from the ground up, but there will be work to do there. And incidentally, he and Vandermark haven't tested before Christmas. They'll be out in January, but they're thinking about test days. They've got 10 days per race rider. They've got their test team, of course, of Sylvain Gintley and Bradley Smith, Marcus Reiterberger, Ilya Mikkelchik. They all get involved. But you would be silly, wouldn't you, to bet against Toprak? I do think Budiga will be stronger, though. He's got to be. He made a few mistakes this year with tyre choices, errors under pressure, which is to be expected. It was his first season. I don't think he'll do that next year. He won't make the wrong tyre choice next year because he'll know this tyre. You like to think Bautista will be back on form. Where's Jonathan Rea going to be? Let's hope that's sorted out, because otherwise it would be a shame to see Rea retiring, or any champion retiring, in the circumstances he's in at the moment. But let's hope they can get that sorted. Toprak's favourite, though, of course he is. He's a generational talent. He's a generational talent. And when we look back on it, when he retires, we're going to realise how special a moment it was. I think we already do realise how special it is. But when we look back, we're going to appreciate it even more, aren't we?
Have we ever had
not everyone can do that.
No, they absolutely can't. Have we ever had a MotoGP? Listen to me. Have we ever had a World Superbike champion who's actually missed 6 races in a row and still become champion?
There was a stat about this the other day. And
if anybody knows, you do.
We haven't. We've had riders miss races. Foggy and co have been injured at points. But no one's missed 6 races, and certainly not 6 in a row. And let's just put that into perspective. That is 120 24 points, 62 over a weekend, times 2 is 124. It would have all been wrapped up by that Aragon, and he still won the championship. He missed 2 full rounds. It's unbelievable. And even he was in massive pain when he got 3 second places at Aragon. In a way, it was good for the championship that he was ruled out. I'm not saying it was good he had that horrendous accident. I just mean the fact he wasn't racing, because it took it to the last round. No way would it have gone that far. But just going back to that crash, though, that was a miracle. That was an absolute miracle. I remember looking out the window at Aragon a few weeks later, and Toprak had just done his track walk, and he was walking back in with the BMW, and it just hit me. Do you know when you lose someone in life who was close to you, and one day you get through the initial grieving process, and you get through the funeral and all the really sad stuff, and then a few months later it hits you again sometimes, and you think, oh, they're actually gone and they're not coming back. It was the same sort of feeling when I saw Toprak out the window at Aragon, of relief as opposed to sadness. Like, oh my God, like, I might not have seen you again. Thought we were so close to not seeing him again. Thought, because that was a shocking accident. The way he bounced off that wall, had he not hit the end of it, Dave, it would have been the end of it, wouldn't it? It would have been the end of Toprak, I'm afraid. It would have been a dead stop. The fact he hit the end and bounced off and dissipated some of the energy is what saved him, really. But yeah, it was that moment when he was walking away. He said, I had to get to my feet because I knew my mother was watching, and I knew the medical officer was watching, Monica. But as he was walking away, that's when his lung was actually beginning to collapse. So yeah, horrendous. But no, sorry, to answer your question, I still think BMW will, at least Toprak will be the force.
Yes.
But one thing that will be interesting is that we only have one BMW team now, don't we? We don't have the Bonobo team running with BMW anymore. They've got Redding on one Ducati. We've only got Vandermark and Toprak on BMW. So is that going to affect things? I don't think it will affect them too badly, if I'm honest, but it might, because you will have some less data now. Well, half. You'll have half the data available as the season goes on.
But yeah, and I get what you're saying. No disrespect to Garrett Gerloff and to Scott at Bonovo, like this season just gone.
Yeah,
but they were never really there. So it's difficult to take data. I mean, they could run some parts in maybe, and help develop in that sense. Like, okay, guys, we've got these. Will you put them on? You're not a threat to the championship, so we'd like you to run these. Whether that would happen or not, I don't know. But with, like you say, the brand new BMW from the ground up with the work of Sylvan and Bradley, it's going to be something a little bit special. This could be the bike that BMW have wanted since they returned to racing all those years ago.
Yeah, because if you look at the team's championship, that shows you which, as a collective, was the better, really. And it was on the Aruba Ducati win. And Ducati won the manufacturers. Now, BMW would have won the manufacturers had Toprak not been out, so let's be clear about that. But in terms of the team's championship, where you add everything together, Ducati still got the edge there. And I do believe that Ducati is still, well, I think you don't have to be an Einstein. Most people know that Ducati is still the best bike as a general package. But BMW, I mean, let's just again just pause and think BMW has won the World Superbike Championship. But if Toprak left when he wasn't there, they had a struggle. Remember Cremona, they were nowhere. They did have a win at Manicourt with Vandermark, but that was in the rain. I doubt it would have been a win in the dry, with respect to Michael and to the team. It probably would have been a Ducati or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's the good thing is it's not easy to predict what's going to happen next year. I still think it will come down to Toprak and the Ducatis, though. And if someone can make a breakthrough. If the motor rolls out with some super package, we don't know really from testing. It's difficult to know. We've seen Lowe's and Bassani first and second fastest in 2 tests now at Jerez, one of them post-race and another one just a few weeks back in November. But we don't know what they're going to do in a full race distance, and we won't know until we're about 3 or 4 rounds into the season. Australia never gives us a proper... It will give us great racing, and it could give us some amazing results, but it's not going to give us a full indication as to who's going to win the championship.
I remember Davide Giuliano, I think, won the opening race there one year, and you think, oh, and then you go, no, it's Phillip Island. Eugene Lavity was another one.
Lavity won. There's been a few over the years. Giuliano's had podiums. He never actually won a race, Giuliano.
Did he not? I thought he did.
He never won a World Superbike race. But yeah, he was up there. I remember him on the podium, and there was another one. Who else have we had? We had obviously Toprak won his first Yamaha race, but didn't win too many other races that year in 2020. There's been a few, haven't there, over the years that have come out. Robbie Rolfo won a Super Sport race in the season opener and never won another one for the whole of the rest of the year. There's been a few like that, haven't there, at Phillip Island?
The brilliance of Phillip Island.
And it lured people into a false sense of security sometimes as well. But it's the best track in the world for bikes, isn't it?
What was your favourite race of the year, Greg?
Well, the first one that just came straight into my mind was the sprint at Barcelona in terms of the last lap and the last corner and Toprak getting through. It was a TV moment. It was an incredible moment. I thought Andre Iannone might come through briefly. I thought he was going to do a Miguel Oliveira Austria and come underneath both of them and win. But he just slotted it between them, didn't he? The poor old Alvaro with the one who lost out. That was incredible, though. That was incredible. We also had great races at the end of 23 with Bautista v Toprak in a head-to-head battle between two riders on two different bikes. That was amazing. We had some good races this year.
I think so.
But Barcelona's got to be the highlight, hasn't it? Phillip
100%.
Island with Alex Lowe's going around the outside of Bautista on the last lap to win. I mean, poor old Bautista was passed on the last lap twice early doors this year, 24. We had Alex Lowe's in Australia and then Toprak at Barcelona. We had Spinelli winning on a Barney Spark Ducati at Assen. I was a bit lucky, but it was an inspired tyre choice. The Petrucci weekend when you won all three at Cremona was really special.
Agreed.
The moment when we had the technical problem at the circuit and all the track cameras went down. Race one that was at Cremona. And we were having to commentate for a good 4 or 5 minutes, which is a long time in TV, with only onboard cameras and pit lane cameras. So we were just seeing shots of mechanics watching the race and onboard cameras. And often onboard cameras that weren't even looking at where they were going. It was looking into the rider's face. So that was a challenge. And because there are fewer cameras at World Superbikes, you can't do what they do at MotoGP and cut to a helicopter or different onboard angles because we don't have as many. So that was a challenge from a broadcasting point of view, but it was fun. We also lost our screens in our commentary box at Assen. It's the worst thing that can happen. When the viewers can see the picture, but you can't, that is the worst thing that can happen for a commentator. So there was a power problem in the row of commentary boxes at Assen above the garages. And James Toland and I, everything went to black. Everything was black, nothing. Like seeing it at home in front of your TV and just switch it off. We had no timing screen, no TV screen. The only thing I could see was bikes going past the window, but I had no idea what was happening. So our producer back in London, who could see the pictures, because this wasn't an overall problem with the satellite or anything like that, or the TV truck at the circuit. It was our particular.
It was a local problem.
It was a local problem for the commentary boxes. So the viewers at home could still see it. Our director and producer in London could see it. So there was our Jeffrey Bouse has just crashed into turn 4. Obviously, you at home would have seen that before we did. For a while, I just kept going after sort of laps into a radio commentary. But there's only so long you can talk about what the clouds are doing in the sky and what's happening where we are, how the weather is and who's fastest until things start changing that you can't see. And eventually Tozen just said, just so you know, everyone, we can't actually see what's going on at the moment. I tried to just keep going at first in the hope it was going to come back on. But that's that. From my personal point of view as a broadcaster, I actually love moments like that when it goes wrong because that's a challenge. It's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen next. But as a race, it's got to be Barcelona. There were some other phenomenal races along the way as well. There was some towards the end of the year. I mean, the Van der Mark win at Manicourt was great. There was a lot of drama in that race as well. Budiger and Ray both went down at the end of the opening lap into the chicane. So there was bikes everywhere and people trying to get round, and that was a bit scary. Supersport 300s continues to terrify, although I think the riding standards have got a heck of a lot better than they were a few years ago because I had a talking to. Supersport has actually been the more processional class, hasn't it, for the last year or two, which we never would have expected because traditionally that has always been the best racing anywhere, in my opinion. World Supersport, even when it was dominated by a lot of Yamahas in the same way MotoGP is currently being dominated by Ducatis, the racing was absolutely second to none. It was incredible. And there's still rumours going around from certain people I would take heed to and others who I wouldn't. But there are definitely still talk in the air going around that the Supersport regulations in coming years could end up becoming the premier class. How true or not that is, I don't know. Time will tell. It's all going to
Nobody,
depend on the market and
it,
what bikes the manufacturers are selling.
exactly that. Exactly
Yeah.
that. If ZX10s aren't being made anymore, if R1s aren't being made anymore, it's going to end up being apart from Bimota, of course, it'll end up being a BMW Ducati championship. And
that is the thing. The R1 is still being made, but it's not being sold, is it, as a road bike anymore in, I believe, the whole of Europe. Certainly not in the UK, but I think it's the whole of Europe.
But the idea was with production racing that you could watch it. The old adage of win on the Sunday, sell on the Monday is completely finished.
It's completely finished, I think, for road bikes. For track days, it's still there just about. I remember having a chat with Steve Rogers, who, of course, was heading up the CAMS Yamaha team successfully. They won the title, didn't they, in BSB with Taryn McKenzie. And he said it's still there for track days, but not so much for road bikes. Definitely not in the UK anymore. Things are changing. Life is changing. The good thing is, as we said before, because we do still have such a dedicated, hardcore fan base in our sport, that's never going to go, is it? It's never going to go. And there'll be kids of people of, let's say, our generation who are going to start watching it because their mums and dads watch it.
Absolutely.
And there'll be new people. There are still a lot of young fans who are neat to the tracks and come and say hello. And that's nice. I think the thing that is different is there's not as many young people riding the bikes. I think there's people watching the coverage and watching the races and watching online, but not actually riding the bikes. Does that matter? Probably not in terms of the sport itself. You can still go and enjoy it without riding. You know, you're a rider, Dave, but you don't go out riding all the time, do you? You do the odd stuff for companies you work for and represent. I've never ridden a bike in my life, which some people say, how the hell can you commentate on MotoGP or World Superbikes or whatever it is I'm doing without riding? Which is a very valid question, don't get me wrong. It's not because I've never wanted to. It's just because I started off life more interested in cars and then bikes. I wanted to do karting when I was younger, but it just proved too expensive. But I always really wanted to be a commentator. I wanted to be a broadcaster. That was my dream, not to race, really, which is why I never really rode a bike. And I'm not going to lie. I'd be worried. I'd be scared to ride a bike on the road. Not because I don't think I'm capable of riding a bike. I'm sure I can if I want to learn. But I would be worried that someone's going to bloody kill me because there's some bloody idiots out there, especially in Spain and Italy and places like that. And I live in Spain. I'd be worried. I'm not saying I wouldn't try and learn with some of the great people we know in the industry and go and do a track day or something. That would interest me to try. But the point I'm making is you don't have to ride a bike to enjoy the racing on the telly or go and watch it trackside. How many people drive a Formula One car around on the street? I don't think you're going to see many. They still very much like the racing and the competition and the drama. But that's why we need the drama. We need it to be a solid product, in my opinion. You need a show. You need heroes. You need villains. You need a bit of needle between the riders. Jason Plato is someone who divided opinion very much in the British Touring Car Championship. But he latched onto the fact, and he was smart here, that there was more to be gained than being the villain, than being the hero. I don't know Jason personally, but I know a lot of people who do. And I think he's a good guy. And he's formed a good career. He's gone up to these single-seaters. He raced for Williams in the Renault Laguna in touring cars, and then he's won titles with Vauxhall and then later with Chevrolet and raced for all sorts of people. TV career as well with Fit Gear. And he got the showbiz side. He thought, if I be the bad guy who deliberately takes off Matt Neal a few times than others, there's more to be gained from that. And then as a result of that, you got a column in, I think it was the Sun newspaper and places like that. So maybe we need someone a bit more like that in bikes as well. But that might require the organisers to actually say, right, let's just think about this. I'm not saying you need to deliberately drum up rivalries, but there are a lot of riders, believe you me, who don't like other riders. The difference is I just don't say it. Because we're living in this, like you said before, health and safety,
sanitized world.
Let's sanitize, let's all be friends, which I get, but there are sponsors out there who
Please don't
like
say that, you'll hurt his feelings.
Exactly.
That's his problem, not mine.
Exactly. But there are sponsors out there who like that, who thrive on that, bad boy image, you know. and people who say what they think. Look at Josh Brooks. He says what he thinks. Scott Redding says what he thinks.
Josh Brooks hasn't been a bad boy for 15 years, but it's still referred, even though he brings it more from the motocross side, as he said in the podcast a couple of months back. But
did the bad boy name come from motocross then, or did
Yes.
it come from the incident? So it wasn't from the incident at Mallory, which, by the way, in fairness to Josh Brooks, it wasn't even his fault, was it?
no, no, it wasn't. But in fact, the only of the incidents of the three of Sylvain Guintoli, Mallory Park, and Michael Rutter, the only incident of the three that Josh could probably put his hands up to was Rutter. The others had mitigating circumstances. They weren't actually irresponsible moves. Not saying the Rutter one was irresponsible, but I think maybe having the chance to look at it again, he maybe would do it a different way.
I think the shaky burn Michael Rutter one was irresponsible of Snetterton in 2002 when they were renegade Ducati teammates and they went down the old Rebbit straight, didn't they, Snetterton? And I'd still miss that layout personally. The new one's great for spectating, but I do miss the old Snetterton into Riches, into Sears, and straight down the back straight.
Straight down the back straight, yeah.
Yeah. And he just absolutely took Rutter out, didn't he? And Rutter went ragdoll across the grass. He was terrible. I remember Barry Nutley and Steve Parrish commentating on that. But Shaky often says to me, oh, Greg Haines is trying to cause trouble again with his questions. And it's not that. It's not that. It's just that I think sometimes you need to ask the questions that people at home would want to know the answers to. And I do think, I promise, hands up, I am never out. I can honestly say I have never once said anything in commentary, a voiceover, a written article, a podcast, or anything that was intended on purpose, deliberately, to cause trouble. I'm not saying things I've said haven't caused trouble, because sometimes you say things and someone somewhere won't like it. Hands up. But I've never deliberately done it, and that is a promise. But sometimes you need to ask the difficult questions. And I also think another problem we have nowadays in sports in general is you hear reporters asking these friendly questions, wanting to be, that it's not our job to be friends. I'm not saying we need to be rude to the riders. Of course we don't. I look up to the riders. What they're doing is unbelievable. But sometimes you might have to ask a question because they've run into someone, and it amazes me that the number of journalists and reporters who dodge those difficult questions. That's our job. And don't get me wrong, it feels uncomfortable sometimes if you've got to stand there with a rider who's just wiped somebody out. You don't really want to have to ask them about that. But you've got to, because that's what everyone at home is thinking about. And I think journalism sometimes gets a bit too friendly as well in the sports world. This is not so much political and news, general news, but I remember hearing a football reporter asking a few years ago, or something like, "How was the game today?" What sort of question is that? How was the game today? You need to ask direct questions that the people at home would want to know. If someone's missed a penalty, you're going to have to put it to them, aren't you?
Are you happy with your performance today? What could you have done different?
Exactly. It's like if someone makes a mistake, like when I love Garrett Gerloff, but there was a time in 2021 when he was wiping out a lot of people. He wasn't in the right headspace, and I felt sorry for him. I really did, but at the same time, he was causing a lot of incidents. Or Jonathan Ray setting off in the wrong gear from Barcelona, which is not the sort of error you'd expect from a 6-time world champion. Not the sort of thing you really want to have to ask people about because it's difficult. But if we don't, we're never going to get a decent reaction from anyone on the TV, are we? And I think we have a responsibility as the media to ask the questions that the people at home would want asking. And it just amazes me and frustrates me sometimes that you get people asking. It's like a lot of reporters want to be friends with the athletes. And in my opinion, maybe I'm Mr. Old-fashioned, I don't know. But it's not our job to be friends. I'm not saying be unfriendly, but we've got to ask the questions people want asking. And I personally think that's another reason as well. Let's all stop being so friendly and let's all be pals. We're not saying let's cause trouble and cause absolute carnage. I'm not saying that. If you ask Stuart Higgs, who runs BSB, he will agree that if someone slams race direction, I remember Shaky said something harsh about race direction a few years ago, or maybe it was Haslam, I can't remember now. One of the top BSB riders at the time were against a penalty or something. And I remember Stuart actually being excited about the thought that we might do a headline about so-and-so slams race direction, because he understands as a PR man that that's good for the championship.
That Tommy
Really
Bridewell at
does.
Alton Park.
It was either Haslam or Shaky, but there might have been one with Tommy as well. What happened with Tommy? I'm trying to remember what it was. There was
With the
also
safety car.
Safety car of Snetterton as well when Taz went too soon and the second guy followed him. It was Glenn Irwin.
Taz, Glenn and Brad all got time penalties.
Yeah. And Glenn Irwin was absolutely furious, and
he was apoplectic.
That was the COVID year. That was the weekend
22.
after the death of the Queen, sadly, wasn't it? It was that weekend, and he refused to do the photo with the showdown contenders in his leathers. Didn't then he turned up in his, I don't know if he was in Sibby's or his normal team gear, but he was in his
in regular team gear.
Regular team gear, and
so they had to do it then on the grid at Alton Park next time out.
Oh,
but he was livid because of what happened, and it was down to understandably.
It gets people talking though.
Oh, absolutely, it does.
That's what I mean. Yeah, but Taz caused that, didn't he? Not intentionally, obviously, but he went too soon, didn't it? Or did the safety car get it wrong? What was the thing?
I think the bottom line to it is that I don't think Taz potentially gave it enough room because it's such a short pit entry at Snetterton. When the car pulls off, it literally has to slow down to come to one side, but the boys are about to pin it, and they went past the safety car before it had pulled off the track. But there were mitigating points from both sides, and I think the fact that penalties were given, I think, for me personally, shouldn't have happened. But I'm not race direction. I'm not a racer. But the rule of the book of the MSVR of how to do British Superbike says you do not pass the safety car until it has left the circuit. And it hadn't at that point. It slowed down to get into pit lane because it is the shortest pit entry of the season.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The riders have briefings every weekend, and it amazes me actually how often the riders don't know the rules of the championship they're in, whether it's safety car procedures or even the flags, not knowing what a double wave yellow flag means or whatever. It amazes me the number of times we've seen things over the years. People not slowing down under red flags and coasting on the racing line in Moto3 and Supersport 300 qualifying. How many times are we going to talk about that? And then the penalties come and it's carnage. Everyone's getting all angry. So to be fair, if they've been briefed about the safety car, which they would have been, and it would have been in the book, then you have to say Tasmania Estate there. And Glenn would then say, well, hang on, he's gone. I can't wait because he's gone.
Correct.
And if he doesn't go, someone else might go and he's coasting. But you could argue, well, no, he's gone, but that's his problem. You wait till you pass the car. He would have been given a penalty. You wouldn't have got one. But then what would have happened if the leader's gone? Someone in third place might think the guy in second's got a problem because he's not gone. So he might go. So he gets a penalty for overtaking under a safety car.
The only one watching the safety car is the guy at the front, isn't it?
Yeah. The guy at the front becomes the safety car, doesn't it? Once those lights go out and the safety car is about to pull off, it's the responsibility of the leader of the race to dictate the pace and become the safety car. It was a tricky one. I can't really say exactly what happened because I wasn't there that day, and I don't know what was discussed with the riders and the organisers in the briefings, and I've not read the actual rule book on that one for BSB. It would be wrong to say. But the reason we're talking about this is that these sorts of things generate interest, don't they? Yeah. So that's when it is the responsibility of the media to cover it properly and ask those tricky questions. Because otherwise, if you say, oh, I don't want to get involved. I've known reporters, Dave, go up to people and not want to ask them questions because they've had a bad race and the rider's angry. And I think, well, it's kind of your job. It's your job to ask the questions. If he's angry, he's not angry with you. Don't take it personally.
It's media duty, isn't it? It's part of racing.
We're a messenger for the people at home. So we're letting down. This is the way I look at it anyway. If I was going to say, oh, I'm not going to go up to so-and-so because he's angry, I've got to at least have a try. And if he refuses to do the interview, I just say, oh, he's refused to talk to us. Or you might even get the reaction on camera that will say, I'll talk to you later.
Or you have a press officer standing away going, not now.
Yeah, but you might even get that on camera and they might say, not now. And that's great. Oh, that stopped us. We can't get in. Back to you, Rachel. We'll come back to you in a bit. We'll see if we can get in a minute. Or whoever, or Matt, or whoever's presenting the show. And at least it's something, isn't it, to add to it? Whereas if you just say, oh, probably shouldn't go there right now, they're probably better for you. What? What do you mean we shouldn't go there? Get in there and find out what's going on. And if that means you can't get in, at least you've tried. I don't know. I think we've all got a part to play in this. And everyone's different. Everyone's got different ways of doing it. And variety is the spice of life. But I just think as a journalist or a commentator or broadcaster, we are a messenger for the people at home. And it's our responsibility. We're not there for fun. We're there because it's a job and we're being paid to be there. It's an enjoyable job, don't get me wrong. And we are privileged to do the job, but we do work very hard. And but we're there as a messenger. We're not there as I'm just here as a fan who happens to be working here. You know, it's wrong. If we don't get the answer to the questions people at home are asking, what the hell are we doing there? We might as well not be there. So I just think it comes back to the overall show, doesn't it? And heroes and villains and talking points. And it's down to us to, I'm not saying make up rumors and try and make drama out of something that isn't dramatic. That's wrong. But if there is needle between riders or a crew chief and a rider are parting company, as we've seen recently with Jonathan Ray and Andrew Pitt, I know that there was been a big fallout between those two and they were previously best mates. And now I believe they're not talking. And you could say that's none of my business, but it's in the public interest in World Superbikes. These people are known. It would be wrong of me to not say that if I know that. There's certain things people say in confidence, which you wouldn't say, but people at events I've been to recently are all talking about that. So it is a known fact. So that's an example, I would say, where I think it is right to tell people what's happened, which is sad, by the way. Let's hope those two can patch things up, because it's sad if something that's happened in the professional arena has resulted in a breaking up of a friendship. These things do happen though. But yeah, I don't know. I just think I also think the bike racing community can stick together a lot more and stop bitching at one another in terms of, and I've done this, I will be honest, I've done this in the past. Sometimes on Twitter, we compare the lap times of Superbikes and GP, and there's a bit of, I've done it in the past because I know there's certain people in the MotoGP paddock who it annoys and it's funny. But I don't do it as much, Dabs. I think we all need to stick together.
I agree completely.
We're a small community in comparison with football and the other sports you were mentioning. What's the point having a go at each other? Like, you see some people really letting themselves down on social media. And I'm not one who's ever got into, and I don't think you are you, to get into one head-to-head confrontations on Twitter.
No.
If riders do it, like we saw with Alicia Spargaro and Josh Brooks a few years ago, that's different. They're the riders.
But they know more about that situation than I ever will.
Yeah. But members of the media giving their own personal opinion on matters that have nothing to do with racing, what's that all about? We follow racing journalists on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it for their insight into motorcycle racing, not because we want to know their views on Brexit, COVID, Donald Trump, Keir Starmer, or whatever else is being discussed at that moment. Leave that for the political commentators. It's not our job.
It isn't.
We've got our own opinions, but it's not our job. Our followers are not following us. When I say us, meaning the collective, for our political opinions.
They're not.
I don't get that.
I tell you what, I've just had a little flash up on my phone that says I've got 10% battery left.
Oh, okay. I've got 47 on mine.
So what I'm going to do is hit straight into our Patreon questions that we put up a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, crikey. Okay.
And I've not checked these out either. So in the description below on audio and on YouTube, you can click more in the description. Our Patreon page and our YouTube membership page is available for you should you wish to help us out and ask questions of the guests, the honourable guests, before they arrive. Right, I hope we can get these in, mate. Okay. Here we go.
I'll answer as quickly as possible so we can get them in. How many have we got?
6.
Okay, let's go.
From our great friend Craig Lowe, what's been the strangest stat you've found out and shared on commentary?
Hello, Craig. Strange. Oh, crikey. 30-second pause isn't going to help your battery. I'm trying to think, Craig. Okay, I think I'm going to go with, it's more a fact than a stat, but the fact that Kyle Ride fan club sing songs about him like, oh, Ridey, oh, Ridey, oh, Ridey. Oh. Apparently they sing it down in the local pub.
They do, in Jack's Bar, in Jacksdale.
In Jacksdale, yeah.
I just want to see if I can charge my phone while we're...
Good timing because I've had a coughing fit.
Will that charge it? I think so. I think we might be charging now, Greg. You never know. Just to get us through to the end of the... let me see. Very professional as always.
Does this bit stay in?
Yeah, it will, yeah.
Look at it.
I don't know.
You don't
Where
get
is
this
it?
on...
I think it's on TNT, dear. Excellent. Thank you for that one. Who's been your unsung hero in World Superbike this year, and who's flattered to deceive?
Unsung hero. So
Yes.
I can't say Toprak really, can I? Because Petrucci.
Yeah.
Petrucci, I think he's superhuman. There's a few other riders who don't like him because he can be a bit naughty on track sometimes, and he has caused a few incidents this year. Wiped out Bautista at Most. Had that silly thing in practice at Cremona with Van der Mark, if you remember, when he stuck his finger up at him, slowed down in front of him, and then VDM ended off up in the gravel at the next corner. That was all a bit silly. But no, the fact he nearly died in a terrible, terrible motocross crash in April and came back to racing, won the Independence Championship, and did the treble in Cremona was unbelievable. I really like Daniele Petrucci. I think he's a great guy and a great ambassador for the sport. And so he was definitely my unsung hero. And also the marshals, there always are unsung heroes because without them, we cannot go racing and
can't do a lot without those boys and girls, can we?
And they have to deal with some really quite bad situations at times. So the marshals is an overall answer, but this year, Petrucci for me.
Perfect. Thank you, Craig. On to Maggie Day. Firstly, how did you enjoy touring with JT? Unfortunately, she missed it, but what a legend. And secondly, what are your thoughts on the 2025 season? I think we've covered quite a bit of that, as Maggie says at the end.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Maggie. 25 season in a nutshell, because we've already discussed it a lot, but Toprak's still the man to beat. Budiger will make fewer mistakes and will be closer. Oh, they're going to saw a flash of lightning here. Yeah.
There you
Can
go.
you hear that thunder? It's absolutely pouring down. It's a big thunderstorm. Yeah, Toprak, Budiger. It's going to be interesting what Bemota can do. I think Bassani will actually give Loans a good run for his money. That's my feeling. Honda should be closer, but I'll believe that when I see it. I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle for Gerloff and Kawasaki, but I hope I'm wrong. But it's not going to be easy. And you'll see people like Petrucci and Iannone hopefully challenging for wins more regularly. But for now, it's still Ducati v Toprak on the BMW going into the season. To answer your other question, Maggie, being stuck with James Dawson for 2 weeks was bloody awful. Having to put up with him, the egomaniac that he is, talking about himself in various destinations around the country for 11 nights was an absolute disaster. No. It was a pleasure. It was really good to work with James and his girlfriend Angie, who was overseeing all the merchandise. He did an excellent job. Well done again, Angelica. Great stuff. Still waiting for my commission from that merchandise, by the way. No, I'm kidding. James Tozen, I always call him the egomaniac because he likes, he loves himself, James. One of the questions I like to ask him was, do you dye your hair? He still denies it, viewers. And I hope he's watching this. But no, jokes aside, James is, yes, he loves himself as a personal rider because he's a rider and he's got that arrogant cockiness about him. But to be fair, he's twice a world champion with 2 different manufacturers. He's raced in MotoGP. Yeah, he's going to be loving all this as well, as I say that. Out-qualified Rossi on his debut. But James is a kind, warm-hearted, generous person. He's had me staying with him in his house on various occasions. He buys people presents. He does nice things, random acts of kindness. And he's a good guy. And he just happens to also be a pretty talented motorcycle racer and piano player as well. So no, it was really good. And I really enjoyed going around the country and seeing different parts of the country I'd not seen before. I'd never been to Cardiff. I'd never been to Norwich. I'd never been to Newcastle, Glasgow, and there's a few other. Southampton we went to as well. I had been there before, but not to the venues we were in. My personal favourite settings were the actual theatres. It just feels cozy in the audience. Obviously the top row is further up as well. It comes closer to the stage. It goes down the closer you get. There is a word for that, and I can't remember what it is.
The stalls and the circle.
Yeah, exactly, and all that. The one in Nottingham was an absolutely superb facility at the end of the tour. Leeds Carriage Works Theatre was lovely as well. And I loved seeing the different people. And everywhere you go around the country, there's people who love bike racing. And the questions are really genuinely interesting. We had some good humour, some great chats with people. So yeah, no, it was a really interesting thing to do. It's mentally quite draining though, because you're on the road a lot. We did about 1,000 miles in the space of about 12 days. But we also probably greeted 1,000 members of the public. It was always around 150 odd. Some of them were less. The smallest was a very close-knit thing in London with about 40 people in a room. But then some of them were over 200. So all in all, there was around 1,000 people came to see us. And thank you, by the way, everyone, because it was a pleasure. And it was just nice to hear people loving bike racing and loving, obviously, it was primarily about James and his career, but we had a lot of chats about MotoGP and Marquez and Toprak and racing in general. And people were just very kind as well and saying nice things about the show and the commentary, and I really appreciate that. So no, it was good. It was a good experience, and I'm not going to say it won't happen again either, because I think James is planning to potentially do something else in the future as well. So we'll see what we do.
Excellent.
There certainly seems to be demand from people to want to have chat nights and things like that. So no, it was good. It was really nice, actually. Really nice.
That could be a perfect point for me to plug the chat nights that I've got with Kyle Ride coming up on the 7th and 8th of February at the Brackenborough Hall Hotel at Louth and the Hellaby Hall Hotel near Rotherham, just outside of Maltby. This isn't working. I've got 3% left, Greg. Have we got 3% left? Last question from the great Mick Strickland. I believe commentary must be the hardest skill to master. Greg, you're a wizard, and the teaming up with JT was a masterstroke. Who's the best motorcycle racer you've interviewed and why? And who was the worst and why? The quickest answers you can ever give.
Crikey. First of all, Mick, thank you very much. That was very, very kind. I would thank you more, but I haven't got time because Dave's battery's going to go. But that is really nice. Merry Christmas. Hope you have a really good festive season. That's very kind of dude. Toprak, I'm going to say for now because he's a gentleman. He's very humble. Always says what he thinks. Worst, that's just going to lead to trouble if I actually just signal someone out there. I'll say Andrea Iannone for one incident. He's been good this year, but one incident in the past when he was just refusing to answer any questions and was generally being very strange. But he's not a bad guy, and it was fine this year. But yeah, I'll give you an answer. So there you go. And thank you again, Mick. That was very kind.
Gregory, we've got to cut it short. It's time to go. The battery's dying. Thank you so much, Gregory Haines. Merry Christmas, mate. We'll speak soon. Take it easy.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Have a really good festive season. See you all in 25.
Cheers, Greg. A huge thank you to Greg Haines for his time. Always great to hear his insight into motorcycle racing and this glorious sport of ours. And you can catch him again next year on Eurosport's World Superbike coverage alongside James Toseland. That's not quite all from us for this year. We've got one more show coming out between Christmas and New Year. So while you're digesting your turkey or whatever it is you have for your Christmas lunch and you've got nothing to do but pack away wrapping paper and stare at the decorations thinking, I've got another week yet before I'm back at work. Apologies to those of you who are back at work in between Christmas and New Year, of course. We've got Michael Rutter coming your way. 90 minutes with the blade. It's a fascinating, wonderful chat that we did a couple of weeks ago down at his workshop in Dudley. And it's a great time of year to bring it to you in between when there's not much going on. While you're here, make sure you check out the old shows if you're new to the show. As we said at the top of the show, 7,000 subscribers is a great achievement. And we're also creeping towards another big milestone on YouTube, which will be a little more apparent in about a month's time, maybe 6 weeks when we get there. And I can't wait to share that one with you. That's something else we're going to be super proud of. And it's all down to you, the viewers, the subscribers, and of course, our members. So if you're a member, you'll pick that up on the Friday. If you're interested in membership to the show, that's in the description below, as is our Patreon page as well. There's no obligation. All help is greatly received to keep this show on the road. All that remains to say is, from our house to your house, have a fantastic Christmas and all the very best for 2025. Thanks for everything. Bye-bye and happy Christmas.